Star Wars, what I think. Hello and welcome to this week's video. Over the past couple of months I've done a couple of videos just giving a general overview of certain franchises or fandoms and saying kind of what I think of them or my experiences with them. And this time around I thought I'd have a go at Star Wars. Why not? I was a big fan of Star Wars when I was a little kid. Not that I would have said that not that I would have said that, because I didn't even know what a fan was at that point. I just loved Star Wars. I guess the earliest memory I have is probably about, I don't know, 6 or 7. Whenever we got a video recorder, sometime in the early 80s. We all wanted to rent Star Wars. That was the first thing on my and probably my brother's mind when my parents decided that they were going to get a VHS. We want to rent Star Wars. We want to rent Star Wars. We want to rent Star Wars. And we rented Star Wars. Yeah, like I said, I don't. It's weirdly I don't remember watching Empire Strikes Back. I've no idea. I don't have any memory of that. Obviously, I did, but I don't know. I can't remember anything particularly associated with that. Whereas Return of the Jedi, I went to the cinemas to see it. I remember going to the cinema to see it with my mum, my friend Chris, and his mum. I still remember actually standing at the bus stop waiting for the bus to come to take us down to the city, to the cinema. So that's nice. Like I said, I was a big fan when we're talking a young age. When I was probably still in single digits, my age. I had the action figures. I bought the action figures and the spaceships. Christmases and birthdays. That was what I had. I got the Return of the Jedi weekly comic. I think I only have one now. I have one left at this point. I mean, I bought them all the time, weekly or monthly, whichever it was. I do have, which I've only just kind of found recently. It was stuffed in along with a load of other books, along with some of my parents' books for some reason. The Return of the Jedi annual. I recently found the Return of the Jedi annuals, 2 of them, one from 1983 and one from 1984. They're both still in excellent condition as well. I like the artwork. Very nostalgia inducing. Anyway, I guess at some point, however, I guess Star Wars kind of drifted away from me. I mean, probably, I guess it was probably around 85, maybe 85, 86. Started getting a bit big for action figures, and plus the lack of any new material. The Star Wars movies were dead, and we're talking 2-3 years, which is a lifetime when you're 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever. So I just kind of drifted off, and then of course in like Christmas '86 I became a Doctor Who fan, and that became my primary thing. And unfortunately, unlike some of my other childhood fandoms, like I don't know, Soap or The Little Vampire, Star Wars just never lasted for me. Once I left it, I just kind of left it. I do remember probably about 84, possibly 85, but I think probably 84. I got Return of the Jedi on VHS for a Christmas present, along with Gremlins. My mum got them from the local video store. I guess they were ex-rental. I don't think they were pirate because they had the proper like stickers on the actual tape, but they didn't have any actual covers. They were just white VHS chunky, hot cut covers. But yeah, I guess they were ex-rental. They were both very good, and I had Return of the Jedi for a long time. But yeah, Star Wars just kind of drifted away from me in the late 80s. I got into Doctor Who. I got older, ultimately becoming a teenager. Yeah, I just kind of moved away from it. And I guess I just kind of forgot it for the most part. I probably maybe watched them on video a couple of times, but not that often. It just wasn't one of my things anymore in the 90s, certainly. It wasn't. Honestly, the last time I watched them was the special edition re-releases in the late 90s and early 2000s. I saw the special editions and at the cinema and enjoyed them all. I've never watched them since. Not even the original trilogy. I've just not watched it since. And of course, there was the prequels. There was a lot of excitement for the prequels. I mean, I was interested. I wasn't as excited as the hardcore fans. I was interested. New Star Wars movies, okay. I can't say I'm a particular fan. I know they've been somewhat reevaluated lately, just because the Disney stuff's been so absolutely shite. They've been reevaluated with a somewhat fonder interpretation. I can't say I was particularly into them. The only one I've even seen more than once was Phantom Menace. I thought that was just okay at best. Attack of the Clones was totally forgettable. Revenge of the Sith was probably the best, but again, I have not seen it since the cinema in, 2005. So yeah, it's just, from my childhood fandom, quote unquote, though I wouldn't have called it that. Yeah, it just didn't really mean all that much to me by that point. And of course, it was after the prequels, there was a long time, 8 or 9 years or whatever. And then you got the announcement that Disney was buying Star Wars. My immediate reaction was, okay, because I didn't really care that much. Maybe they can, maybe they can bring it back to kind of the excitement of the originals, rather than the somewhat self-important stodginess of the prequels. And I have to be honest, the first trailers for The Force Awakens looked promising. It looked like Star Wars. I'm like, okay, I wouldn't say I was excited, but I was mildly interested, in much the same way that I was mildly interested in, Star Trek Picard until the reviews came out and they're like, nah. I was mildly interested. I probably would have gone to see it until then I heard off the forums and the movie forums that they were killing Han off, and he went out like a pussy, and I just kind of thought, nah. Do I really want to see this? No. Even though, like I said, not really a Star Wars fan. It was still part of my childhood. Do I really want to tune in to see one of my childhood icons getting killed off like a fucking pussy? And it's because it's so obvious. It was so obvious even then. The only reason they're just bringing back the old characters to get the suckers in, and then they'll replace them with new ones. Who cares? Not interested. Go away. Leave me alone. So that was that. I've never seen it, and I have no interest in seeing it. In fact, I have not seen anything of Disney Star Wars, with the exception of the first 45 minutes of Rogue One, which I rented from the video shop when video shops were still a thing. I rented it. I watched about 45 minutes. I thought it was incredibly boring, with incredibly nondescript, bland, unmemorable characters, and I just kind of went, nah, no, I don't think so. Thanks, but no. And of course, then you got The Last Jedi, and they totally, I heard all about it, them totally shitting on Luke, because that's what we do in Hollywood these days. We just destroy heroes, especially if they're men. and just shit all over them and make everything they achieved meaningless. No, not interested. Sorry, bye. and again, I've seen nothing. I've seen nothing else. I've not seen Solo. I've zero interest in Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker. I have no access to and no interest in any of the Disney Plus shows because they all look and sound like shit, and they all just lead into the sequel bollocks anyway. So who gives a fuck? I don't give a fuck. Again, I'm saying this, like I said, I'm saying this as someone who has not been a fan of Star Wars since the early 80s, mid 80s at the latest. And I'm still disgusted what they've done to it. I'm still disgusted what they've done to it. I don't have to say I can only imagine what hardcore fans feel, because I know exactly what hardcore fans feel. They'll feel exactly like I did as a hardcore Doctor Who fan in 2017 plus. You know, disgusted is just the word. It seems to be the only word to describe pretty much anything in the modern entertainment industry. Disgust, possibly accompanied by disinterest. So yeah, that's. I do have one of the Star Wars books. I think I still have it. I read it as a kid. I've not read it for, donkey 30 odd years, 40 years. Shit. Splinter of the Mind's Eye by Alan Dean Foster. I have that. That's it. I've not read any of the like the 90s ones, like the Heir to the Empire ones. I'm aware they're supposed to be good. I'd rather read them than watch the supposedly upcoming rewrite version where yet again Luke gets replaced by a woman who steals his entire story. Yeah, I don't think so. But yeah, that's kind of my Star Wars story. It's a bit of a weird one because I've probably, certainly of the Disney ones, I've seen fucking less than the MCU, and I'm not even not a particular fan of that. But the Disney Star Wars, again, the first trailers looked promising, and then I heard what they were doing to Han, and I'm like, nah, I don't need to see that, thanks. And nothing they have produced since has remotely tempted me to come back, especially after 45 minutes of Rogue One, which was supposed to be the good one. That's the one even some Disney Star Wars haters approve of, and I just thought it was boring as fuck with utterly boring characters. Yeah, no thanks. And certainly, I'm a much bigger fan, even though I wouldn't say I was a fan in capital letters. I'm a much bigger fan of Star Trek, to be honest with you. I certainly like a lot more of it. Whereas Star Wars, I loved the originals when I was a kid. I have not sat through any of them in 20 years. I saw all the prequels, but again, I've not seen them. And the only one I watched twice was Phantom Menace. They never really did it for me, and the modern ones just look like soulless corporate shit. Probably because they're soulless corporate shit. Anyway, that's my take on that. That's what I think about Star Wars. I do think it's a shame. I do feel bad for the real hardcore fans, especially the ones who followed all the EU stuff and that, only for the mouse to take over and say, oh no, that doesn't count. Our stuff is the real stuff, and then produce utter shit that nobody likes. Dear God, it's the modern world all over, isn't it? Anyway, that's my Star Wars story. I hope you enjoyed this video. Talk to you again soon.